Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and you're in for a treat this week. We are going to explore how Cobra rewrites history by omitting information from textbooks. It's a completely preposterous plan that anyone listening in Texas has never heard of. And in order to dig into this subject, I am proud and happy to welcome my friend. He's a writer. He actually has worked in the scholastic settings before as a school counselor, and he's out here in California as a writer. His name is Michael Witt. Michael, welcome to Joe on Joe.
Thank you for having me, Joe. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, my goodness gracious. So we're going to talk about you being a writer. We're going to talk about your journeys through your childhood and things you were into. But let's get this out of the way since we're talking it's the subject of school and school counseling. What's your experience at working as a school counselor?
So I was originally working in radio, and job security is limited there. So I decided to go back and get my master's degree in counseling.
What?
Yes. And I did it the stupid way. And by stupid way, I mean I went to an expensive private school. So anybody out there who's wondering if I'm still paying it off, the answer is yes. And I did a few internships in like K through 12 settings, like guidance counseling type settings, and did not really like it. This is back on the East Coast. I've only been in LA for about a year now.
Oh, okay. Where are you from?
I moved here from New York. I'm originally from Philadelphia.
Love it.
And I also went to school and grad school in Philadelphia, so that's where all this was taking place. But when I got into did an internship at a college, I realized I liked working with the adult students more, and, well, the rest is history. I ended up having a career in higher education counseling.
So in college?
At the college
level.
Yes.
Awesome. And what school was that? What school did you work at?
At first I was at a community college in Philadelphia, Community College of Philadelphia.
Shout out Community College Philadelphia! What's up, Philly? We're big in Philly. Big numbers in Philly.
That's good to know. My hometown. Then I was at the New School, or the Parsons School of Design. That's in New York. That's where I was before I came out here. Then I came to a college out here, which I hated more than anything, and probably shouldn't name, but I will say
it.
I probably should.
Shout down the college you won't name. Shout down. That's all right.
You know what? I really want to.
You know what? We don't have a lot of listeners there, so screw them.
I really want to, but I probably shouldn't because there may or may not be a lawyer involved with them right now.
Oh, boy.
But yeah, they're here in Los Angeles.
It's all good. So,
off the air.
Yeah, no, it's all right. So as a counselor at college, what kind of issues are you dealing with there? Like, is it social issues? Is it more I don't know what classes to take for my career issues?
Well, every once in a while I get a social issue. Primarily, it is a concern about what's next after I graduate, more job focused, and also the classes. What kind of classes should I be taking?
Because I never spoke to a counselor in college, and that would be why I had no idea what I was going to do. Counselors training counselors to be counselors.
Yeah. So, actually, an interesting story that's coming to mind. When my first counseling appointment, once I moved to the new school in New York, was with a student who, as a child, her and her parents defected from North Korea to South Korea.
Oh, shit.
And she was telling me the story about how she doesn't know any of her extended family. She knows her younger brother who was born after they were in South Korea, and her parents and uncles, aunts.
Is she
haven't heard from?
Is she an Un?
What?
Is she an Un? Or a Kim, I guess it would be. I think the last name is Kim, right?
I don't recall what her name was. But
She doesn't know her. She doesn't know her cousin, but he's got his interesting haircut. He's a little chunky. He's good friends with Dennis Rodman.
And he has power.
Yeah. Unlimited power.
Yeah, so that was interesting.
So do they come to you like I'm addicted to and I mean this seriously, like I'm addicted to drugs, or I'm addicted to this drug kind of a counsel problem, or is it my dad won't buy me this, that, or I can't afford
unless
this
or
that,
and
unless
ask questions about my job,
you know what I mean? I got
exactly,
so which would it be, or would it be both?
I would say it's both, more on the side of, my parents wanted me to come here, and or
my dad's a producer at blank, and I'm only doing this so he can hire me later. And
I would also get questions like, my dad works at, Goldman Sachs or whatever, or
Yeah,
some big
yeah.
company or some big studio. Do I still need a resume to apply for a job there? It's like,
Oh boy.
Really?
Yeah. That's maddening.
really? You're in college?
That's maddening. So how many years were you in that college environment? About six,
It
7?
would be, yeah, 6.5.
6.5 years.
7,
Yeah. So in that world, did you deal with, were there any questions at this higher level of like censorship of books and stuff like that? Because that's kind of what we're dealing with on today's episode. Cobra goes in and they change the history books. They rewrite the history. They put up statues to losing Cobra generals to try to buck up.
I wouldn't say so. Here's the thing about working in higher education. Anybody who's considering a career in higher education, please listen closely and take my word. So there is the faculty side and there's the administrative side. The faculty side is, like your professor, your guy who has his PhD in economics or whichever subject he's teaching. A guy that really knows, or guy or lady who really knows his or her stuff. Political correctness. You like that?
Yeah.
It's good for your show.
That's
on the administrative side, you have a lot of people who wanted to be something else but couldn't be that, so they went into higher education.
Interesting.
So like my boss and my boss's boss, like my boss's boss career, education. She was in college for engineering. My boss, sports medicine, and then a master's in sports medicine. So it's like these people who clearly had no ambition on being in higher education. They just found, it's a job that I could do, so I'm going to do it.
Right.
Whereas me, I actually have a bachelor's in education, a master's in education. I actually wanted to be an educator.
And so are you? But are you not doing that today?
No, I'm not doing it today. And I have no desire to go back into higher ed. Actually,
It burned you out.
It burned me out. Yeah, I
destroyed you.
It's
it
destroyed
really?
me. Yeah, I don't regret leaving at all. Like
Yeah.
it was the best decision I've ever made in my life. I feel like it was like I hate to say it, the weight was lifted.
Yeah. And so now you're writing out here in Hollywood. You're working on your scripts and what are you doing?
Writing, living off savings.
That's great.
And looking for work in like an HR. Like I'm gonna need a job eventually. So like
Sure.
like an HR
Sure.
employee
But
training.
what
type
kind of stuff
setting.
you focus on writing?
Writing. So right now, I developed a sketch that was performed at Second City
Awesome.
throughout the summer, called Class of '48. The idea was to I wanted an all-female cast. They were all lifelong friends who graduated from high school in 1948 at their that would have been 70th year reunion. And they're talking about how they're the last ones left and so forth. Anyway, long story short, I took those characters because I liked them so much, and I developed them into an actual pilot, which I'm constantly tweaking. And I try to describe the pilot as it's Orange is the New Black meeting the Golden Girls. So, and what I mean by that, so Orange is the New Black, they're confined in a state-run, under budget, a lot of social problems in a facility.
Yeah.
Golden Girls, older females, same thing here. Older females in a state-run nursing home. Yes, they had the freedom to leave, but they still have all those budget constraints. Family abandons them there, so a lot of that plays into it. I'm trying.
So it takes place in a nursing. Do you
In a
have
nursing-
do you have history of working
yes,
in nursing homes? Or?
I was raised by a nursing assistant. My mother was a nursing assistant.
That's brilliant, kids. That's
Yeah.
where the inspiration comes from.
At a
when they
state-run
say
facility, too.
when they say write what you know, they
Yeah.
don't mean write your life story. They mean write about environments and situations that you're comfortable and familiar with because you know the details of them. And if it's something you're not comfortable and familiar with, a good writer will go out and get comfortable and familiar with those things. They will research those things. They will live in those worlds. I've never worked as a coffee barista, but if I'm going to write a story about working at a coffee shop, I'm going to interview people. I'm going to get comfortable. I'm going to know those worlds well enough to write it. And that's what writing what you know means. You grew up in that environment. And so now you're right. That's fantastic.
Yes, and once they would have their usual bring your kid to work day once a year, and my mother would always bring me and my sister, and
Yeah.
we'd get like a little tour, same tour every year. And every year we'd come back, and there would be a few residents that weren't there anymore from the year before, unfortunately.
Jesus.
And it seemed-
We
it seemed
laugh.
to be
We
the one
laugh
that-
because it's.
I know, but it seemed to always
it
be the ones
happens
who
to-
like talked to us and made an impact on us. Like we would remember,
Oh.
Jerry. I remember Jerry
Yeah.
last year. Where is he?
Oh,
he's
that's
dead.
that's
It was always the nice ones who didn't make it to the next year. But yeah, it was a state-run nursing thing. And my mother was also the union rep there, so she like she would be at home, doing any business on the phone. I would like hear
Sure.
all the stories, like what goes on behind the scenes and the battles and all that stuff. So
we hung out at our church a lot when we were kids, and my grandma was a member of our church, and so a lot of the women her age, or a lot of older people there, and so we would hang out with them a lot too. So we weren't at a nursing home, but I was around the women of my grandma's age, a lot. They would make us blankets and things like that. They would have their sewing, and the more we got, and they were delightful, and they were nothing but wonderful memories. But then I remember there was a point when I remember hearing a story about, like, oh, grandma doesn't talk to fill in the blank. I forgot what her name is. I will just say an older woman's name, Alma. Grandma, she doesn't talk to Alma anymore. And I remember going, but they're old. Like, why do they get angry with each other?
Yeah.
Isn't it? And
it's
because
so high school.
because right, it was so high school. Like and they're obviously it's because they're human, and people could still butt heads. Of course, that's the reason. But I remember it being such an eye-opening thing as a child of me going, but they were friends, and now they don't like each other. They're grandmothers. What's there not to like? But,
exactly.
It's just such a moment of real of you must have been
serious
immersed
element
in that.
in what I'm writing. Like I'm including some of that bullying is going to be there. There was it wasn't at the nursing home my mom worked at, but growing up there was a nearby nursing home where there was like an STD outbreak with the residents.
I've heard, I've read those. I've seen those stories in the
news.
Like,
I want to get all that in. And there's also been stories. There's a character who's like obsessed with his freedom, like being able to control elements of his life. And his name's William, and he got a prescription.
Wait, obsessed with freedom. His name's William.
Yeah.
Is he going to have his guts slowly ripped out and yell freedom?
No, nothing like that.
William Wallace.
But so it's one thing that's interesting about that community is you learn that the smallest things make the biggest deals to them. So like for William, it's I was able to go to my own doctor, and he gave me my medicine, and instead of giving it to the nurses for them to give me my daily pills, I'm going to keep this one to myself. It's me having control.
A little bit of control they can have.
Yeah, and it sounds funny when you're reading my pilot, but it's real, and that was my goal, to make it incredibly real, but also funny.
It's so real. I mean, it is just like you say, like prison. Like it's real, like that. Like that's you have no control. So the little things you can control. That's my toothbrush. That's my magazine. That's my pack of cigarettes. It's my whatever.
Yep.
That becomes such an important thing in your world.
Yeah, and that's
it's crazy.
It's crazy,
but it's funny.
It can be funny.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make little things like that funny. Then I'm trying to make things that are normally hilarious kind of sad.
Yeah.
Like I kind of planned out where they want the season to go, and there's going to be like this climactic point in the season where a rival on the show I've yet to develop ends up going to the bathroom in her pants, and you're laughing and thinking about it. It's funny, and anybody listening probably but my goal would be to when it happens, like I want to make it like incredibly sad. Like this lady's humiliated by this, and she can't control it. Like I want everybody to get that realistic feeling of this is going to be us one day.
Right.
That's the goal.
Well, that's great, man.
Yeah,
that's great. Well, it sounds
there's
like
my soft side.
It sounds like no, I love it. It sounds like you're well on your way, man. And so that's gonna see. That's just so great. That's why you're so perfect for this episode, Kindergarten Commandos, where you've got the scholarly background, and then basically it's dealing with children, but it's the same kind of that. You said earlier the high school bullying or high school cliquish, we'll say, because it's not always about bullying, but it's a high school cliquish atmosphere, and it sounds like you were raised pretty deep in that. So what you were raised in New York or lived in Philly or
Philadelphia?
You were raised in Philly.
Yeah, New York was New York after grad school for work. Yeah.
So Philly, when you were like 10 years old, we were talking earlier. I don't think you were. You said you weren't really into GI Joe, but mid-90s. What kind of stuff were you into?
So I was really into Mortal Kombat 2 on my Super Nintendo. Actually, I've been working. This is why I feel I deserve this time off right now.
Yeah,
I've been working since I was actually 7 years old because I had a cousin who had a paper route, and I would help him out. And when I was 10. I guess I was allowed to have my own paper out by the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I was actually delivering papers. And
sure.
I remember saving up my money, and it was $80 to get this Mortal Kombat 2 game when it first came out. And I was like so proud of myself, like, I bought that. I saved up $80.
Yeah. Oh, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That is a lot of money.
That's 20 years ago. A lot of money.
Yeah. And awesome. I too was a paper route guy.
Yeah.
And it was a struggle.
Oh yeah.
The struggle was real, especially in Philly. Climate's pretty much like Chicago.
The winter.
Winter is
still
still and then like you're you're trying to slosh around on your bike as long as you can in the
Yeah,
snow,
well,
and then eventually you have to walk
the good
it.
thing about the bigger a city like Philadelphia is it's a lot of row homes, so everything's walking.
Okay.
So you usually have a car, and because it's easier than the bike. Because, I mean, if you're on your bike, unless you're going like slow to the point where you're going to fall over sideways, it's hard to fast enough as you're passing.
Well, I don't know.
doors.
That's how the game Paperboy worked, right?
That's true.
You just hit a button. Trust me, I had all these plans of wanting to make ejector things like I was like, if we put a spring on a piece of wood, it would have load the thing and it would fire it just like Paperboy.
Don't you love humanity? I mean, it's a paper route, and we're looking for ways to make that even lazier.
Yeah. Did you also have like the paper route fantasies of like when you go to, I don't know, we would have to go collect the money once a month.
I hated that.
And be like, I want the hot divorcee from down the street to answer in her negligee.
Yeah. You wish certain people would answer. And actually, it wasn't always about the hot person. It was always sometimes about like, okay, the husband never tips.
Well, there was that.
The wife
too,
always tips.
Yeah, or
and I don't see the wife's car in the driveway right now, so I'm going to come back.
The more realistic one was just that person's an a-hole. Like I really don't like that person, and here they are again, and they're upset about paying me their $4 or $5.75.
Yeah, I only ever
had
one bad experience when I was collecting, so the guy missed his every 2 weeks I would do it, and he missed his last week, so he owed double.
Yeah. And
he just like, I don't must have having a bad day. Usually he was a very nice guy. He would joke around me and stuff. But he just like lost it on me, canceled his subscription and everything. And I actually went to school with his daughter. And, and the next day, his daughter felt the need to apologize to me and say how she felt embarrassed.
That's funny. That's funny. There was always the people that would just tip you, pay you, and tip you in coins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then there was
or
one
checks would piss
checks.
me off too.
Yeah. There was a dude that was. I mean, obviously, there's going to be the hoarders on every route too, and he lived. He lived right next to our grade school, so you would walk by it if you went a certain way every day. And he was I would say a clean hoarder because he kept all of his newspapers, but he kept them stacked up and bundled right in his garage. I don't know if he was planning on recycling them or if he was just keeping them just to keep them. But he was lived alone, and it was one of those situations that it could have gone serial killer, or it could have gone the way I think it did go, which was he was just a nice old man who was a little peculiar and lived on his own. Yeah, but he would always pay in pennies, and on Halloween he would always give out pennies. But he was just a peculiar dude who sat in his garage all day. And as a kid, I remembered that was one of the earliest experiences of meeting someone who was different. Mm-hmm. Just different. Like that's a different dude with a different lifestyle. And at first, you're judgmental of him. You're Boo Radley him.
Yeah.
He was kind of a Boo Radley. Mm-hmm. So you're like, oh, this guy's a weirdo. But then the more you got to know him, and the more you went to his house, and the more you see, oh, he's just different. He's just okay. I don't think we had the word hoarder in our vocabulary at the time, but he keeps stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay, but he's always nice and he's always friendly, and then he became that friendly. He was that Boo Radley guy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Did you have stuff like that?
There was a hoarder. He I don't know what the inside of his. I never really talked with the guy. I didn't collect from him. He paid directly to the company.
Yeah.
So I had to go collecting and knocking on his door. So he hoarded in his yard. He was like the only house on my route that had a yard. And it was a big yard too, and it was just like hundreds of old lawnmower parts.
Oh my god!
Like these old metal 1940s style lawn chairs, like tons of them, rusted as hell. It just looked ridiculous. And when he died, they ended up clearing out his yard and building houses.
Of course, yeah. I mean, that's the lesson for all of us. When you die, they will just move on.
Yeah, but you get to there are people who I met and collected from during that time, and or just delivered papers to, and they're still with me because I remember learning something from them, and it sounds so cheesy, but
no,
it's just
that's great.
All my life, we always had small dogs in the house, like Shih Tzus, Western Terrier, stuff like that. And there was this house nearby that had two massive Rottweilers, and I was always afraid of them as a kid.
Yeah.
Then when I got my paper out, I had to collect from the person. They were the nicest dogs in the neighborhood. I mean, they could probably tear me apart if they wanted to, but they were
because they saw you every day.
Yeah, I would pet them, and the owner was very friendly. I mean, the owner looked like this lunatic guy, but he was very soft spoken. He was like a Mike Tyson type, big, crazy looking, but soft voice.
Oh, that's.
And I don't think he ever went to jail for attacking anybody. So.
No, well, let's hope. Let's hope not.
Not too Mike Tyson.
Yeah. Let's hope not. So, well, I'm excited. We're going to talk a little more about your love for video games during this episode.
Sure.
I think we're going to talk about dealing with kindergarten commandos. Man, I'm excited. So, where on social media we can find you at Witt Michael WITT Michael.
Yes, that is me on Twitter.
And
also on Instagram, same thing.
Also on Instagram, and you're throwing jokes out there. As long as you're on the interwebs, kids, you go to at Joe on Joe Pod. That's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You follow me. Send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. I got to be honest, kids. I did the math today. There literally are 10 more episodes left to go in the show. There are only 10 episodes. So if you want to be a guest on the show, I'm putting the call out right now. Get into me ASAP because time is ticking. And by the end of the year, we're going to be done with Joe on Joe. So at least in its current incarnation. I'm not making any promises. However, so get out there, do it. Make sure you go to Patreon, patreon.com/Joe and Joe Pod. See how you can help support the show and get access to our Patreon exclusive podcast, Joe and Joe Illustrated, where we go over every single episode of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, the comic book, in sequential order, page by page, panel by panel, and we really dig in.
Joe and Joe listeners know that I love comic books, G.I. Joe, pop culture, and my wife and dogs are pretty great too. I also love learning how people get to where they're at and where they're going. All of that comes together over at the Dreamer Comics podcast, except for my family stuff. That'd be really weird. Omar Spahi interviews someone from the comic industry every episode, and they break down the journey that creator took to get from reading comics to creating them. Comic luminaries like Jim Valentino, Ross Ritchie, Kyle Higgins, and so many more can be found at dreamercomicspodcast.com or find them anywhere you get your podcasts. Everyone has a dream. Learn how to make yours a reality.
And we're back with that. We are going to start the episode. Are you all ready, Michael?
I am ready to go. I'm very excited.
All right. Michael Witt, writer, counselor, former. No, I'm thinking of a retirement home enthusiast.
Hey, you know what? Like I said, I've been working since I was 9 years old. I'm 32. It's over 20 years. I should be able to retire.
Yeah. And you just I think you're just gonna hang out there. You're just gonna live amongst them. They'll be like, oh, you're a new orderly here. You're like, no, I'm down in 3H. I'm excited. So we're gonna get ready. Everyone, put on your DVDs. We're gonna watch Kindergarten Commandos, and here we go. So. And listeners, I know I say this every episode, but I love it. This season of G.I. Joe opens with cold opens, which is weird for a cartoon if you think about it.
Yeah.
Like normally cartoons would start with the animated intro and blah blah blah, and we don't get that this time. So we've got that's the head Cobra Bat, which is he's a Cobra robot, and they're attacking a poor fire department who's trying to just put out a fire, and
it's pretty dark.
Yeah, it's very dark. It's very dark. And Duke's hair, this is the 90s version of Duke where they would it's Fahrenheit 451 is what's going on. Yeah, they're totally burning books. So Cobra is traveling around town burning books and burning book depositories. So G.I. Joe has to show up. There's Mercer, and Mercer's an ex-Cobra soldier who turned to a G.I. Joe guy. It's like Mercer, like mercenary kind of a thing. So G.I. Joe's trying to put this fire out, and they're trying to save this book. Is it a book repository or depository? Which one was Lee Harvey Oswald hidden in? It was a book depository, right?
That's a good question.
I think it's a D with a D.
I think it is,
but doesn't it make sense to be a because it's a repository to store books, or does it just mean the same thing?
You're depositing the books there.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, either way, the Cobra book burners have been caught. And they're all filing away. So
I'm noticing they have like reptilian type skin. Is that supposed to be hair?
It's their suit. No, it's their suit.
Okay.
Like it's the animation on their suit. And we see that in this book. Funny. No, it's hilarious. In the book that the Cobra troopers had is a fake Cobra history book. So it had Cobra crossing the Delaware. And so they were burning the regular books, and they're going to be replacing them with the new ones, and that's the crux of the episode.
Okay.
And here's the, here we go into the opening. So, did you ever see any G.I. Joe at all when you were a kid? Because this stuff would have been on. This would have been on a couple years when you were like 5-ish, 6-ish, I think.
It's possible. I just don't recall it.
What is your first time you heard G.I. Joe? Like, do you remember what the first time you heard the?
I don't,
Was
but
it like
I'm
the live
watching
action
this, and
movie
it's
or
reminding me
something?
of a show that I did watch at that age,
Which is
He-Man.
Oh yeah, love
Like
it.
it looks like the same person drew it. Like I mean, the animations look very
Well,
similar.
so wait, so He-Man, was it the New Adventures of He-Man, the one when he was in space, or was it the one like the old school traditional barbarian He-Man? Do you remember?
If I recall correctly, it was more still than it was animated. It was like
So it's barbarian He-Man.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
because they did a reboot of He-Man around this time. I'm not sure exactly the years, but it was around this time, and they because they had to refresh, they were trying to refresh everything, and they called it the New Adventures of He-Man. And they set it in like a more of a Buck Rogers-y kind of setting. And that looked a little more G.I. Joey. So Kindergarten Commandos, written by Doug Booth. We know Doug Booth's a talented writer. And it's a well-written episode. It's dealing with a lot of fun subjects, I think, actually. And they're really pushing these. These are the like Air Commandos helicopter toys. This season is really saying go out and buy these toys, kids, because they're always using the Air Commando copters. They're always using the gliders that we saw a little bit earlier, and we see a little bit later in the episode. And Mercer's digging into the plot here. Oh, look at this! That's a
early
camera phone. That is a Mercer has a camera phone on his G.I. Joe walkie-talkie. That's fantastic. That's James Bond level stuff. And if you look at the placement of like the iris, that is kind of like your iPhone. You know what I mean? Like the animation of it isn't like big and clunky to look like a camera. Like it's just a little
Apple should
round.
send him a cease and desist or something.
No, they need to send Apple a cease and desist.
There you go.
This was before Apple. I love that. That's really great. So books are just blowing up everywhere like confetti. So you
is it good to burn false history books given the impact it'll have on the environment?
Wow, these are the kinds of that's a
Pretty
good
deep,
question.
huh?
Yeah.
Okay, Joes, we've got a fix on Mercer's last known position. But be careful. It's bound to be infested with snakes.
And then what we're dancing around is that literally in the news, and I don't like to get super political on the show because I know I have listeners of all walks of life, and I hesitate doing this, but I literally, there was in the news recently where in Texas they were going to write Hillary Clinton out of textbooks.
Hillary Clinton and there was another lady who was getting written out as well.
Yeah, and
Grace Kelly.
Grace Jones. So
Grace Jones.
Grace Jones, this giant African model from the 80s. Yeah, and that's frightening to me.
Yeah.
Just the idea of that is frightening. The idea that regardless of whatever party you tend to be on, that would be an acceptible answer to you. You know?
I agree, because you can't tell America's story without her, like her or not.
No, you can't.
I don't exactly. I did not like Ronald Reagan, but I don't think he should be taken out of history books.
No, of course, yeah. I mean, it's maddening. It's maddening to hear that being done by people in the modern age. That's the kind of draconian stuff that they used to do, hundreds of years ago in like the Middle Ages to control people's thoughts. Like let's write. Going back to the Bible, 2,000 years ago, let's write Mary Magdalene out of the Bible.
Yeah.
Because we want this, we want that result, we want this result, and it's.
Yeah, I'm Jewish. I don't think she's in my book anyway.
Oh well, oi Gewalt.
Kind of. We're a few notches ahead of you. On that one.
Yeah. Appreciate it. But it's that kind of thought police.
Yeah.
And it's scary, and it can happen in any way. I mean, you don't get me wrong. There's propaganda on both sides, but the most basic things of like school textbooks and keeping
Wait,
science.
is he feeding? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is he feeding a snake to a frog?
Well, I mean, he wouldn't.
Or a frog to a
he would. That snake is going to eat the frog, even though that's like a garter snake. Like that's not a crazy venomous snake. That frog is awesome though. Look at the animation on that.
Yeah, he looks too happy. He's definitely going to have to
Yeah.
die. He looks too
That
upset.
cobra, that snake looks incredibly upset. And okay, it's Elliot from E.T. just rescued the frog. Okay, so Cobra is basically in this school classroom with all these kids, And the animation on the show is such that G.I. Joes are typically drawn proportional. However, they've chosen to draw the children as giant bubble-headed cartoon children.
Yeah.
Like, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're very... It's so the effect is Cobra has found a mutant group of mutant human children with giant heads, of which to test this new scheme on.
I mean, say what you want about Cobra. I don't see any school shootings happening, so they may be doing the right thing.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true. Yeah. So I think there's a lot to be said about this episode. I think this warns a lot, this.
Oh, wait, never mind.
Yeah.
We're firing for blowing up food trucks.
Oh, yeah.
Which I've never had visit my school.
There's
so.
a school shooting going on. And that
Gotta stop those snakes before anyone
if
gets
you notice, one of the kids was like really upset about it. The rest of them were like, hell yeah. Way to go, metalhead. Also, a neat little trick. I think it's that smart kid that does it later. The kid, I call him smart kid because he has glasses, because that's the language of cartoons. If you have glasses, you're the smart kid. That kid was paying attention to Metalhead, and that comes in later because I believe that kid fires, if memory serves me, he fires Metalhead's rocket. Metalhead has a audio controlled rocket pack. He yells bang, and that's how it fires. I hate it personally, but it's a fun gag on the show. I think the kid fires it later because he saw him do it with the bang.
Now, why does this school just happen to have a pile of king-size mattresses laying around to catch somebody when they fall through the roof?
It's they were teaching Princess and the Pea earlier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, see, there's your answer.
Coincidentally, I fell through a roof, and I did not land on a...
When did you fall through a roof?
When I was...
Well, we're going to go to commercial. I'm going to find out when we come back.
tuned. G.I. Joe will return.
Today's file card features on the Sky Patrol Parachute Assembler, codenamed Airborne. His file name is controversial. It's Robert M6. His primary military specialty is Sky Patrol Parachute Assembler. His secondary military specialty is Battlefield Medic. His birthplace, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. All paratroopers pack their own chutes, so they'll have no one to blame but themselves if their canopies fail to open. Assembling a chute is another matter altogether. The maintenance of the canopy and shroud line is best left to a master rigger, and there isn't a man in the Army who knows more about standard US T-10 parachutes than Airborne. Once the patrol is safely on the ground, Airborne becomes their combat medic. He's a real lifesaver in more ways than one. Quote, Airborne is one of the most popular guys in the patrol. You have to like him. He makes sure your parachute opens every time you make a jump. Airborne's also the individual who has to go out, usually under heavy enemy fire, to save you from an unfortunate encounter with a bullet or from a run-in with a landmine. Through thick and thin, Airborne is always there when you need him. Now, I said controversial because this says it's Airborne, but it ain't Airborne. It's not Franklin Talltree, the original Airborne. For some reason, they repurposed his name here, and they named him Robert 6. I can't find any nefarious reasons for the switch, so let's just assume it was done behind the scenes just because they wanted another Airborne, and they had a character mode they had to fill. And let's make a little headcanon that Franklin Talltree is the original Airborne. He retired. Let's not assume that he was killed in the line of duty. Let's just say he retired and they had to bring this new guy in. I like the distinction that they make on his file card. He's the parachute assembler, not the parachute packer. As far as the figure goes, he looks good. He's all gray. He's got the gray camouflage pants, which is nice because it's actually not apparent at first blush. I just thought he was a little more straight gray. He's got a cool helmet. He's got a red visor on a gray helmet, and that's nice. And of course, functional silver parachutes are always sweet. And that rounds out our look at all of the Sky Patrol members. We've been doing this now for 12 weeks. Some better than others. I think Airborne falls in the cool side, throwing no shade on our friend Talltree. Oh, and we have to say, Airborne is just a repainted lift ticket. That's pretty funny. So not only did he repurpose someone else's name, he also repurposed someone else's body. So with that, Airborne, Robert M6, we salute you.
So you fell through a roof.
I fell through a roof. It was, I was 13. It was one of those nights where my friend says, oh, tell your mom I'm sleeping at your house. I'll see I'm sleeping at your house. And I'll go run the streets all night.
Yeah.
So we went on top of there was a pool house next to a city-owned pool, which was abandoned. And we would go on top of the pool house to get stoned. And we were doing that this night. And
How old were you?
13. There were these pipes, these U-shaped pipes that came out of the rooftop, and there were 6 of us, only enough room for 5 teenage boy butts on this one.
Yeah,
bike.
this is, by the way, how a Stephen King story starts.
I sit on the next closest thing. I was number 6.
Yeah.
And the next closest thing was a plexiglass skylight. I didn't even feel my butt touch it. I went straight through,
Whoa.
35 feet,
Whoa.
landed in what was the men's changing room on a wooden bench.
Wow. Were there any old naked men still in there?
No. It was an
No.
abandoned building.
Too bad.
Unfortunately.
Could have been hot.
So there was the bench I landed on was about a foot wide by 2 feet long. All around it was cement floor. I broke my hip.
Oh, you did break your hip.
Landing. But the thing
Holy
is, I landed on this really small thing that broke my hip. Anything around was cement floor. I could have either been dead or
That would have just
paralyzed.
been, yeah.
Yeah, so
wow.
I got lucky.
Wow.
Yeah, and it led to a bunch of surgeries.
did,
I finally got it replaced in July 2015. My hip.
Holy cow! When you hit the bench, did the bench break? Like
No.
did that-
No. Actually, no. So I hit the bench and it knocked the wind out of me felt like forever.
Yeah.
And I remember just catching my breath and it was pitch black. My friend's up there with a lighter looking down.
Wow.
I can see him. He can't see me. And I catch my breath. I'm like, oh, I'm fine. I can't believe I survived this. I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm okay. Go to stand up. And it felt like my leg just did a 360.
Oh my god!
Yeah, because I didn't feel pain at first,
Yeah.
so I tried to stand up thinking I was okay. And
Yeah.
Then I fell over, and surprised I didn't notice this until the next day. A piece of the plexiglass went through one of my arms.
Oh,
and
wow.
Stitches put in.
So that's wild, man.
Yeah.
You are actually literally lucky to be alive.
Yeah,
you really,
yeah,
really,
yeah.
really
Yeah,
are.
The fire department had to break me out of the building and everything.
Yeah.
The doors were sealed shut.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a mess.
Yeah. So what does breaking a hip feel like? Like where did you like?
So-
I can't even imagine that. Like,
The pain is like here. It's like your inner
in
thigh.
your-
where
in
it
your inner
hurts.
thigh?
Yeah.
Really?
Both during the fracture and the pain that you have for the rest of your life. It feels like you broke your femur. But all the surgery happens like almost on your butt cheek almost.
okay, real quick. The kids just literally put a sincere torture device. This is why actually this is really smart writing. They put a cage on Metalhead that you ever see like old Vietnam movies where they would put or World War II torture movies where they would put a cage on someone's head with a rat in it, and the
I've
rat
seen that,
would
yeah.
torture them,
Yeah.
eat them, whatever. They just did that to Metalhead with a gerbil.
Is that Lemmywinks?
Yes, yeah. You must. I'm the catata fish.
Jesus Christ.
You must find your way, Lemmywinks. Just Lemmywinks.
Such a great show.
I love that show so much. But that is shockingly awesome that they did that
yeah.
gag on this.
It's shockingly awesome because again, it's a kid show.
Yeah, they're right. Well,
And
that's
they're
what-
bringing back like this medieval torture device
Yes.
in a public school.
Oh, that's great. It's great. I love that. I love that the
man.
kids are sassing back on Cobra. They're clapping back. They're not taking it. And here we go. This is the Dayglow era of G.I. Joe vehicles.
Yeah.
So everyone's driving around in pink and orange trucks and stuff. And I know this was definitely, I mean, this I've said this before, this was the tail end of me being into it. I wasn't really watching these episodes, but I was still playing the toys. I still had the toys going. And when these toys were on the shelf, I was like, I don't want this. Like, this isn't the G.I. Joe I signed up for. It doesn't look remotely real. And the ninjas are trapped. Mercer's tied up Cobra Commander. Mercer's cool because he's just there to rescue the kids. That's what's exciting for me. So in the meantime, they're just going to hang out in the yard. Meanwhile, that kid looks like, pardon me, this is Mercer 2. So this is like a second iteration of the character called Mercer, right? That young redhead kid looks like the first iteration of Mercer as a child. He had a buzz cut, redhead, or he's either red or like a brown haired. But that he looks like a young Mercer in this. I don't think that's necessarily probably on purpose, but you never know. We're going to commercial. We'll be right back.
Hey, listeners, if you're anything like me, all apologies to your family. I'm just kidding. It's likely that they made you this way. No, I'm talking about that I'm always looking for more G.I. Joe content, and I think I found it. Stop what you're doing. Okay, don't stop listening to this podcast. Okay, you multitask and go to Facebook/Special Mission Force. Brian Wilkins is curating all kinds of wonderful, nostalgic G.I. Joe content, including new pics from his fantastic Instagram page @Special Mission Force. On his Instagram, he's taking photos of Joes out in the wild, in the real world, doing stuff. For me, the two things that stand out the most are his variety of characters that he takes pictures of and like the depth of field in these pictures. It's just a wonderful job of directing focus for you. I think you really will enjoy his work. So like him on Facebook, follow him on Instagram and Twitter, and get ready for his website, specialmissionforce.com. He's a name to watch in the G.I. Joe game, so get on board now. Now back to the show.
So there's a lot of big ideas in this episode, but ultimately it just like circles around the movie Kindergarten Cop and Home Alone. You know what I mean? That's really what this episode is. But it starts out with such a grand idea, which is the thought training of children into indoctrinating them into the Cobra way.
So be prepared for anything.
Yeah, he needs a shirt.
Yeah, I was
Like,
just thinking about that. Like,
Road
shirt-
Pig. Yeah, his name's Road Pig, and he really needs a shirt. The figure,
Now, why does this kid have red eyes?
because he's been smoking weed. That's you before you broke your hip.
Oh, okay. No.
That's-
I didn't, that we didn't never got to smoke that night.
Oh, you didn't even
Yeah,
have.
I
you didn't
totally
even-
ruined the
They
night.
should have. Well, see, knowing how medicinal marijuana works, they should have tossed you down to J.
This is 1999. We were teenagers. We didn't really know much about municipal.
Yeah.
medicinal marijuana.
Municipal marijuana.
Municipal.
It's where you're.
The city mandates
Yeah,
you smoke
your
up,
city
you get high.
township just hands people marijuana. They should have just thrown a joint your way and been like, "Chill out, dude. We'll be right there." So, Michael, one of the things we like to do on this show is we like to ask our guests if you could be a member of the Joe or Cobra team, what would you be and what would your code name be? So, what are you thinking about, sir?
I knew you were going to ask me that, and I've been thinking about that. And I want to have a name, but nothing but inappropriate stuff comes to my mind. So I'm happy with
we
you.
usually start with what you do. So, like, the name is usually comes last. So, what would if you had to be a member of a paramilitary team or an international terrorist squad? So let's say you used to work with the elderly, right? So.
Well, no, you used to work with
used
students,
or
yeah,
used to
right.
work with students, but you used
Yeah.
to hang out. You used to hang out at retirement homes just
Yes,
because it was the
yeah.
hip place to be, the literal
Yeah.
hip place. Did you share Did you go back and share like broken hip stories with the old people?
I have not. No.
And I'm just gonna say that there needs to be retirement homes. Even Cobra soldiers get old.
But I did say I wanted to get out of counseling, go into HR. So how about I can be like the HR director for the terrorist organization?
Okay, so you want to work for Cobra?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
or maybe do like benefits or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So you're the HR director for Cobra. I like that. I like that a lot. And so
Sexual harassment training. I do all that. Make sure
yeah,
everything's
train them how to do it. Like you're in Cobra now, so we want you to grab butts and we want you to do this. Okay, so you're the HR director for Cobra. I like that quite a bit. And
drug tests as well.
drug test.
So yeah, like what I mean by that is we'll put a bunch of drugs on the table. Everybody will test them.
Yeah, you'll test them out, make sure that they're working. Yeah,
Exactly.
Okay, I like it. Yeah, I like that a lot. What? So I'm thinking of a name like something like Oh, I just had it. Oh, it was just in my head.
Mercer, pull it away.
Guidance Miss Counselor. Come on, what?
Miss
Oh, the dog just came in the room.
Miss Counselor Michael or
Miss-
Miss Counseling Michael?
Miss Counsel. No, Miss Counsel sounds like you're a female crime fighter in the 40s. I'm Miss Counsel.
Mr. Miss Counsel?
Mr. Miss Counsel. That sounds like you're Mr. McZiddleplick. I had one in my head and it jammed. Well, I want to go like HR, human rat sources, but that doesn't seem right either. Well, we're gonna get this. We're gonna nail this down by the end of the episode. But as we have now, we've got. This is the Home Alone part. So all these
Oh, so
traps that the kids set
They're not
up.
even human, those.
No, these are robots,
Oh,
and that's
okay.
what
I
makes
didn't know
this.
that.
That's what makes this great because once they introduce the battle android troopers, the robots can be blown up, and you can show the effects of it without punching actual people and stuff. So there's only one guy on the screen. He's the only human. The rest are robots. But here we got that all the kids doing their Home Alone,
tricks. Yeah,
tricks.
traps.
Yeah, they would all grow up to become like homebrew terrorists, thanks to their training from Mercer, the ex-Cobra, now G.I. Joe guy. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Tiny cobras have fallen to a bunch of kids.
Yeah, this is pretty funny. This is like the time when there was another episode where Cobra had their plans improved by Metalhead's aging grandmother, who visited from the old country, and she fixed all their plans. So it's like either Cobra is going to be fixed by old people or they're going to be ruined by the youth. But either way, they're not capable of doing anything. And here's that little the little redhead Mercer kid. He's on a tear now. This is just a lot of firepower to be had around young children.
Yeah, redhead children are always problems. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Oh
for
well,
people.
nobody's stopping him. And he calls him Snakespeare too, which is very funny. Like Shakespeare, Snakespeare. That makes me laugh.
I'd say it's more like time for me to go fire.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's the kid who uses the fire bang thing. Yeah, so he knows that it's so he fires his missiles, which seems like it's a bad security on.
Yeah.
Like
If anybody can say the word fire,
it should be voice
bang.
activated based on Heavy Metal's voice or Metalhead's voice, not Heavy Metal. Metalhead's voice. Not necessarily
it
this.
works better than Siri from what I'm watching.
That is true. That is very true. I can never get my Siri to work ever. And Alexa in the house does not recognize Rebecca. So okay, now she
really?
just started- Alexa hears me,
Yeah.
but Alexa, yeah, it never hears Rebecca. Rebecca has to put on a husky Joe voice for Alexa
Wow.
to respond. Yeah, she's like, "Whoa, hey, Alexa." Yeah. So Cobra Commander's done. He's defeated. Have you ever had these kind of days as a school counselor?
Feeling
Like where-
defeated?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've also, as a child, I've also had days where I would beeline to the toy he's sitting on. I want to spin around.
Yeah.
Like, that was I don't even know what they're called, but growing up, that was my favorite recess toy. What are those called? Do you remember?
It's the spinner. He's on like a not a merry-go-round.
Yeah, but a bunch of people can get on them. You spin them
the
around.
thing you just spin in a
Oh, I used to
circle.
love
On. Yeah,
those
and it
things.
gets you
And
sick.
they're nowhere nowadays because everybody's like all safe with kids for some reason. Like I would love to do that. Like that's fun to me.
That's
Well, maybe not
hilarious.
that.
Okay, so Brainy Bradley hooked up one of the Air Commandos helicopter packs to the spinner
thing. Yeah, it's one that you can stand on it. There's bars. You hold
Yeah,
on to it. You
yeah,
spin around.
Yeah, the thing at the playground. And
Yeah.
Cobra Commander spun so fast he took off like a helicopter and flew off into the night. And
Yes.
that's how Cobra Commander leaves this episode. It's very realistic.
Yeah, those are so fun. And like jumping off of them, or like I would go on there with friends. We'd try to push each other off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now you go to the playground
Oh,
these
there's
days, and
Cobra
it's like
Commander just landed
Yeah.
like a discus.
Yeah, playgrounds nowadays you can't get hurt
Yeah.
on them. I mean, where's the fun?
Well, yeah, I know, right? Everything's soft and rubber.
Yeah, like all-
and safe. Like, where's all the
Torn up tires and all
jagged
this-
metals that have been urinated by hobos?
Yeah. I want some like rust in my blood.
Yeah. Every rocket slide ever was just a place for homeless people to urinate in, and I mean ever. Like whatever.
Anything that was a tube was
Yeah.
a place for homeless people to sleep in.
Yes, whatever. I don't care what suburb you lived in, whatever kind of community you lived in, whether it was kids or homeless people, they would sleep in it and they would pee in it.
Yep.
Those are the
And
two things that
the
would happen.
neighborhood parents would bring their kids the next day. Oh,
Yeah, and every rocket slide. That's what it was just the worst. And you couldn't. The only time you could comfortably slide down it, use it as an actual slide, was after a heavy rain,
yeah.
or if it was brand new.
Even when they were clean, you would still get a bad shock after you got off the slide. So slides were never friendly to children. You
Yeah.
didn't get you couldn't touch anything
Yeah.
until you were
Yeah.
de-electrified.
Yeah. Or if it was hot, they were
Yeah,
like
they get, like,
reflective. They were
burns
shiny
on your-
metal. Yeah. So it would like be super scorching. Yeah. It's a whole lot of things that kids just don't understand. We fixed for them. We have the scars and broken hips to prove it. Oh, that's terrible. Oh, and I got the name. I totally got your name. It was
okay.
one of those things where it's in my head. I'm like, okay, this will work. And then it like a word,
Gone.
just a gone word. And you're misguidance counselor.
There we go.
That's it.
I
That's
like
it.
that.
You're
I
mis-
like
yeah,
that.
it's
Yeah,
perfect. You're misguidance counselor, and you're the Cobra HR guy. Yeah,
Fine with me.
I love it. I love it.
I love it. Yeah.
That's so great. So, Michael, this is your first episode of G.I. Joe. What did you think of it? Like if you were 10 years old and watching this.
That's exactly where I was just going to go with that. Like, 10 years old, I would have liked it. But as an adult, I like it too. But I see so many things that I just like weapons at a school.
Oh yeah, no, you're not wrong.
and I'm not critical. I love that because I think that's
Yeah.
funny. Like especially like now, like my thing growing up, my cartoon growing up was Ren and Stimpy. Like, and I still love Ren and Stimpy. Whenever, every once in a while, I'll go on YouTube or find them somewhere online and look at some of their stuff. And
what?
And I remember
rolls
thinking, like,
downstairs,
that was
a loner in pairs, rolls over your neighbor's dog. It's great for a snack. It fits in your back. It's log.
It's log.
It's log. It's big. It's heavy. It's wood. It's log. It's log. It's better than bad. It's good.
Everyone loves a log.
Everyone loves a log. Log.
Second best product's a log. The best product, excuse me, is salve.
Salve?
You remember the salve salesman?
No.
It was like a cream that you could use to wipe your butt.
Oh my God, that's great. That's hilarious.
Oh, it's the best episode. And also the rubber nipples.
Oh, the rubber nipples. I remember the rubber nipples, yeah.
Mr. Horse.
Mr. Horse.
Is awesome.
No, sir, I don't like it.
I don't like it.
I don't like it. Such an amazing show.
Yeah, I mean, looking back at that, looking at this, there's so many things in it. You're like, wow, people just let that go into the mind of children.
Well, but it was a different time. There's so much of this that was. This was post Home Alone. Home Alone was like 89, right, or 90?
Early 90s.
Yeah, so there's definitely Home Alone influence here, which is fun. It was a time when you wouldn't think that. It's so preposterous that a military people would be there. That's the joke. Even the movie. That movie Kindergarten Cop, which I don't know, I can't remember if that came out before or after this, but there were guns in kindergarten.
Too,
you wouldn't, if you made that movie today, you wouldn't bring the guns into the school part of it. You wouldn't do that, even though that movie's harmless. It's
exactly.
funny. It's it is what it is, but you wouldn't do that today. So this isn't so weird. Because it was something that people just didn't think of.
Great,
and
I think the change
it would be a thing.
There's been a change in cartoons. So it went from putting this crazy stuff like guns in school stuff like that as a cartoon to nowadays it's very friendly, like SpongeBob and stuff like that. But if you watch SpongeBob as an adult, there's a lot of adult themed jokes in SpongeBob that kids do not get. So I think what they did is they made it very kid friendly, but also very adult friendly with no in between.
We talk about that a lot on this show. Where these shows were definitely talking to kids, but they were talking to kids in adult language.
Exactly,
and they
That's
weren't.
A way to put it,
They weren't pandering to them. And then you get into the pander ones, and then you go to the best element, which is the SpongeBobs of the world, or the Batman animated series of the world, where there is something enjoyable, truly enjoyable for adults, and there's truly something positive for kids. But the kids can find the older material in it, or they can just live in the lower. And G.I. Joe was that mid-range, where it wasn't necessarily speaking to the highbrow, but it definitely wasn't really. This era gets a little pandering. You don't know the history of it. The first 2 seasons of G.I. Joe were less cartoony. This is pretty cartoony. This isn't the stuff that most of people I know I really love took it more seriously, and it was more here's a straight action adventure with a little charm, and that's that middle ground of it's not super highbrow, but we're not pandering here.
Yeah.
This is the era where they started pandering a lot more.
Coincidentally, yesterday I have a group of writers that I meet with, and somebody was referencing the SpongeBob Krabby Patty's training video. There was an episode on SpongeBob where we watched it yesterday because they insisted that we watch it, and the episode is essentially a long training video to work at the Krabby Patty, that SpongeBob had to watch, and it tells you the history of the guy, the crab who owns the Krabby Patty, and there's a part in his history where they say. Eventually, I got myself together after the war, and he's and it shows Mr. Krabby Patty, whatever his name. He's so run down and everything.
Yeah.
And, this is a PTSD type joke, and these kids have no idea what that means, and I'm dying laughing at it.
Yeah, it's great.
And that's what I mean. There's that kind of humor built into the cartoons nowadays, and I think that's funny.
I think it's a sign of good writing, and it's smart writing.
Yeah.
Which you can find anywhere if you look close enough. And I look forward to seeing your good writing and your smart writing somewhere someday on a screen or stage.
I hope so.
I look forward to it,
yeah,
man.
Thank you.
I think you're going to do well, Michael Witt. Remember to follow him on Twitter at WittMichael, WITT Michael. And thank you for being.
Sorry, can I say one more quick thing?
Yeah.
Make sure it's Witt Michael, because there is an incredibly hot, and I'm a straight man. But there's an incredibly sexy, hot Michael Witt, rugby player from Australia.
Oh, hey now.
Yeah, and if you Google Michael Witt naked, his photos show up. So
well, listen,
it's pretty interesting. So maybe
you know what? I'm just going to throw this out there to the gods of search engines. Maybe the Joe on Joe show picks up some of the Michael Witt heat, and maybe we blow up because people are like, Michael Witt, the incredibly hot rugby, say
Rugby, yeah.
incredibly hot rugby player, was a guest on Joe on Joe. Oh my God, I need to listen. So you know what? Let's cross our fingers. Let's hope we both draft off of the incredibly hot Michael Witt.
There we go.
rugby
Hey, I'll
player.
bank on anything.
That's fantastic.
Well, thank you very much for
Thank
having
you, misguidance counselor, for being a guest on the show. And now you, Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.